Hello, my name is Artie. Welcome to our virtual open day. We are the Department of Computing and Communication Technologies. Thank you for joining us. Please send in your questions.
Don't forget you can watch this session again on our YouTube page, and we hope you enjoy the rest of our virtual open day. Goodbye.
Good morning. Welcome to the Q&A session for Oxford Brookes University for the Department of Computing and Computer Science. My name is Dr. Untitled Chapter, and I'm a senior lecturer in computer science, and I'm also subject coordinator for several courses at the department. I would like to introduce you to our little robot here, Wendy. And Wendy is one of our now robots that we use both for teaching and research at our department.
My name is Ariana. I graduated from Brookes in May. I'm now a research student in cybersecurity.
So I would like to invite you to send us your questions if you have any specific questions you would like to ask us. We do our best to answer them as we go along. Just to give you a little bit of background about our department has several programs in computer science. We have our computer science program, which covers the major topics within computer science, particularly emphasis on software development and correctness of software. And we also have some specialist programs, for example, the Computing for Robotic Systems. It's our new program that we've been running for a couple of years now, and that focuses specifically on the software engineering problems within robotic systems. And that we would like to emphasize that in those programs we have some interesting effects due to the fact that people weigh how they build their robots. We also have our program in network computing, which focuses on network technologies, and we have a program in ITMB, Information Technology and Management for Business, which is quite popular at the department as well. And I also can say that our current first year students won the regional award this year. Furthermore, we have our program in software development for business as well, and we are currently working on a cybersecurity program which will come online next year. So again, if you want to send us some questions or via social media or using the chat function, that's fine. In the meantime, Ariana and I will try and fresh out some of the questions we already have for you as well. Now, one question we have, for example, does the department have any student societies? And I think you've been somewhat involved in some of those, haven't you?
Yes, the answer to that question is we absolutely do. So one of the larger ones is the Computing Society. So they do lots of things. So we have students run it. We have our president, treasurer, and secretary. And what we do is run events like hackathons. So, for example, around this time every year we run a hackathon, which is where computer science students and non-computer science students kind of come together to make things. So whether it's an app, it could be an Android app, it could be something for the iPhone, it could be a website, it could be something physical, it could be a hardware hack. We had one team last year who they got a Nerf gun, and if you checked your Facebook while you'd said, I'm going to be doing homework, it would shoot you with Nerf gun pellets. So it's things like that. It's meant to be taking what you learn in the classroom and putting it in a slightly more real world context. I won't say useful, but maybe real world's the best way to put it. So yes, we have a few societies. So we have the Game Society, I think. We also have a Smash Brothers Society, but we have little offshoots. So under the big umbrella of computer science, we have lots of stuff going on. So yeah.
Yes, particularly I think it's very interesting that the students themselves organize these societies, and they are often very much motivated to do things beyond, as for example the Hack at Brookes event that's coming up. When is it again?
Well, that particular event is March 11th to the 12th. That's a Saturday to a Sunday, so it's in a couple of weeks' time. If you're in the area, come check it out. It should be a lot of fun.
It certainly is. I've had several good reports from our students saying that it was the best thing ever, the best night they ever spent in their lives, and that's saying something, I imagine, for computer scientists. Another question we often get is about life projects, and this is something that we actually encourage a lot at the department, to have projects in computer science that is based on real life technologies and the needs of companies and interested people in the area. And I think one of the interesting things that we get out of this is that sometimes this feeds in directly into a research project. So for example, with robotics, which just happens to be one of my specialties, is about how to use the robots to enhance human life, to enhance the way that we behave in our sorry, she's a little bit distracting sometimes because she keeps moving around. Whenever she catches up the text on motion, she will move her head to look at it, which is sometimes distracting. But to get back to life projects, this can be very useful, and particularly when it supports the ideas of how people can work in a real life working environment and solve an existing problem that a company might have. So that's always very encouraging, I find. Another aspect that people like is the fact that we have a quite active placement program where students will go out to different placements at some of the big companies. Think of, for example, like BMW and Walkers, but also think of smaller companies around the neighborhood. So I can, for example, mention housemaids who work on automated house systems and on the sort of microcontroller systems. So there's plenty of scope to work at companies while you're studying at Brookes as an intern, as a student intern, but also to work on specific problems that companies might have and students can help out with. And some of our life projects actually involves doing work here for the university as well. Let's have another look. I haven't got any live questions as yet, so by all means try and get some to us if you want to follow up on any of what I've said so far.
A note on the internships. So some people do internships during the summer, but what we can also do, I think we just mentioned, is a year in industry. So that's what I did, but I actually did mine abroad. So my second year was a year abroad in the States, and then I found a placement there. So there's a lot of scope for something that is a little out of the ordinary, maybe. There's a lot of support in this department specifically to send you somewhere where you can just try something completely new. So my company was fairly small. It was about 2 years old at the time, and it had maybe 15 to 18 employees, and I was part of the software development team. So my degree was the networks, BSc in network computing, and during my placement I didn't really do that at all. So then when I came back for my final year, it was a good mixture of sort of kind of skills and sort of things that I'd learned over the year combined with what I've been doing, and I think it really, really helped. So if you're thinking about that at all, that's definitely something that you could do here.
Thank you. Because I'm the subject coordinator for robotic systems as well, I often get a lot of questions about the robots, so it might be a good time to say a little bit about the robots that we have here at Oxford Brookes. You might have seen the Artie, our robot thespian robot, which we use quite a lot on our logos, and he's always very interesting, and people are always very keen to interact with him because he is a beautiful robot, I always think. But to be perfectly honest, he's not very useful as a robot. He's beautiful, he does exactly, and everybody loves him, but he can't do anything. His arms are simply not strong enough to do anything. While a robot as simple as this can actually be used to do simple tasks. So we have, for example, students doing programs in schools to get students with learning difficulties to understand the material better. And we also have some other robots like Baxter. And Baxter is a more industrial capable robot which can actually lift and move things around, and it's very interesting to also solve problems to do with also solve problems to do with how to interact with people in an industrial environment, which you can sort of imagine is a big problem at the moment. So most robotics interested. Sorry if I go off on robotics.
No, please go on.
Carry on. And so a lot of industry in robotics is about solving the problem of getting people to interact with robots, to work around robots, to facilitate the manufacturing process. And machines like Baxter are ideally suited for that. So that's one of the reasons why we use them. And we got robots like the Nose I already mentioned. We also have some experimental robots that we build ourselves, like Eddie the Head, who is actually a moving head on that can speak. We have a collaboration together with IBM Watson to make that work in a beautiful, interactive, native way of interacting with people. So it makes it more human-like motions. That's what we're sort of looking at. Okay, I've got a first question here. So how flexible is the computer science course in terms of module choice? Okay, the computer science course has over the 3 years that you working at the computer science and the computer science degree, the first year is very little choice. It's basically fixed because we want to make sure that in the first year you have the basic skills needed to succeed in the computer science degree. And the second year you have some more complicated modules to progress on from the first year, of which there's some choice. And then in the third year you have more choice to choose some specific modules. But overall you have to sort of imagine that of all the modules you will do, which is 8 modules per year, so that's 24 modules over the 3 years, you have about 4, and depending on which path you take, 4 or 5 modules that you can choose from. I hope that answers the questions. If not, please get back to me and I'll try to elaborate if necessary. Do you want to say a little bit about this?
No, so I did network computing, and that was fairly restricted, but that was fine because it was the sort of thing I wanted to do. So if you're interested in digital forensics, sort of systems administration sort of thing, some of the classes you do with most of the other people on other courses, but a lot of it's very specific. So in my final year, some of the classes were only 3 or 4 people. So it really depends on what you'd like to do. If you're not sure, I think you can do computer science straight up and you get more choice, which is great if you want to mix it up a little bit. But if you know you want to do robotics, or if you know you want to do cybersecurity, which I think is the new word for saying network computing, because essentially that's what it is. So it depends on what you want to do, but there is flexibility within that.
Yeah. But in particularly about cybersecurity, it's not just a sort of modern topic. It's an essential topic that we need to spend a lot more time on investing time and educating people in following this up, because even in a network computing environment, there is more demand for people to be security aware and to be security capable, isn't that right?
Absolutely, that is absolutely right.
Thank you. Oh, I got something right today there. Another question that we often get, and is it a disadvantage if you have little or no programming experience? Now, you cannot study computers or computer science or network computing or any of the subjects, certainly not robotics, if you are unable to program computers. So programming is an essential part of all our modules. For ITMB, it's a little bit less essential because it sort of mixes in some business technology elements. But you have to be aware that programming will form a large part of the studies you'll be working on. However, having said that, we don't make any assumptions about your previous experience. As a matter of fact, we sort of prefer people to have less experience in one way, because that means that we can teach people the methods of programming from scratch, what we consider to be the right way. And this right way is simply based on the focus on correct processing, correct programming, doing things in a systematic and scientific way. And when you've been taught programming from a book as a self-taught programmer, as a matter of fact, I'm a self-taught programmer a long time ago, before there were programming courses, you inadvertently learn some bad habits, as you would imagine might be the case. So In that case, it's a little bit difficult to adjust for the rigor that we try to introduce into the system. So I hope that answers that particular question. How did you find the programming?
Well, in terms of, so with the Computing Society, one of the great things that they do is sometimes you have workshops or classes or where some students help other students. Some are obviously going to be more experienced. So it's not a case of doing your homework for you, but if you have less experience, you can generally find a space where people can at least give you some sort of support, that sort of thing. But other than that, the academics themselves are usually a good first point of contact for either further reading or I just don't understand this. What generally happens is you will get a supervisor when you get here. So this supervisor isn't subject specific, this is just someone who helps you throughout your degree. But then the module leaders or the course tutors, they're generally very helpful, and generally if you go to them with a problem, they will help you with it. So in terms of programming, the more you do, the better, but I wouldn't say that I'm one of the strongest in my year.
It's again, it depends on your specific interest, but you cannot quite avoid all the programming.
No, no matter how hard you try,
no,
you can't avoid it at all.
No. Another question I have here is about about the support for learning difficulties or dyslexia. We make sure that all the support is in place. We have both departmental and university-wide support facilities that allow students to study here with the right to support, independent of what sort of disability or learning difficulty they might have. And in particular, we allow students with specific handicaps to study here and have additional support on that. So some students, for example, who might, for example, are deaf, might need somebody to help in the transcribing during lectures, and somebody will come in and do that for them. And this is all organized at university level to make sure that you have the support that you needed. And if you have some sort of form of dyslexia or dyscalculia, we provide support for that as well. And as a matter of fact, students with this particular learning difficulty are not actually uncommon on computer science, as you can sort of imagine. There are some people who have, let's say, fixed interests. Another question, which is sort of interesting, is about networking and at the course and being able to work in industry. We have specific networking events, some of which we organize ourselves, some of which are organized in collaboration with other organizations and companies. For people who are interested in studying ITMB, Information Technology Management for Business, or Software Development for Business, they can provide, they are organized by this company called the Tech Partnership, which is a governmental organization to promote software development in business and the relation between business. And as I said before, our students on this particular course won the regional award this year in that subject. There's also the placement years we already mentioned, and there are also the networking chances at the different career fests in the region as well. And of course, Oxford is a very useful place to be for contact with companies, particularly with the close proximity of lots of companies around Oxford and in the southeast in general.
If I can add to that?
You certainly may.
Yeah, Oxford is a good place because there are also lots of conferences. So there's the side business school down the road does lots of sort of entrepreneurial spirited things, and we have the Brookes Entrepreneur Society. So there's a lot of business focus. If you're interested in startups or that sort of thing, this is a very good scene actually. If you're more technically minded, shall we say, there are things like Oxford Geek Nights or there's lots of meetup groups, so there's lots of scope to do what you'd like to do. It's not just within the university, it's the professional scene here is fairly welcoming, and if you want to go and do something, then there is very much the space to do it. As well as so this hackathon that we run and things like that happen internally, and we also have groups of friends, groups of students who go to other universities doing similar events. So in terms of networking, there's a lot to do. The British Computing Society sponsors our societies, which means that we then go to informal gatherings, so colloquium sort of things. And it doesn't mean you have to be doing active research. As an undergraduate, sometimes that's quite difficult. But if there's a class that you enjoyed, you could make a poster for it and take it to meetings like this and meet people from across the country and from across Europe as well. So it all depends on how engaged you want to get, but there's definitely room for it if you want to.
And we actually support students to contribute to current research at the department as well. Just another live question I got here. How flexible are your courses in terms of module choices? Okay, so in the computer science is probably the course which you have the most choice. So you're allowed to explore different branches of computer science, because this is basically the core development of computer science. And you could say that every other branch of computer science is in fact a specialism coming out of this computer science. So when you come to do any of our courses, you'll have a core which is shared with the computer science degree. But in the computer science degree, you will have several modules which you are able to choose. As I said earlier, about 4 or 5, depending on which direction you want to study in. On a program like ITMB, Information Technology Management for Business, there is some choice between choosing more business-oriented modules or more that we share with the business school here at Oxford Brookes, or to choose more programming, web development type modules instead. And this is again about 3 or 4 modules for that particular program. For software development for business, you have somewhat less choice because this program is more structured along the rules of the tech partnership. For software, for computer science, for computing for robotic systems, unfortunately we have less choice, primarily because we're trying to cram an entire robotics course inside 3 years, and there you only have 1 module, 2 modules in the 3rd year you can choose from. For the network computing modules, that's about the same as the computer science, I believe. Yeah. So you got 4 or 5 modules you can choose from. And for the, am I forgetting a particular course?
The software development.
Software development for business, already mentioned that. So, no, I think that's all the courses we have. I sometimes get confused myself. Another live question come in now. You mentioned recent hackathons. How successful have students been? Would you like to?
Oh, how successful are they? Well, I guess that depends on how you measure success. But last year we hosted 67 students from across the UK. So we had a bunch from London. We had Brunel, King's College, University College. Yeah, lots of London places. And people from Edinburgh came along too. So we had about 67. In terms of, we had prizes and things, and we had companies sponsor us and come in, and we had some really interesting projects. So this Nerf gun thing was one of them. If you're procrastinating on Facebook or something like that, then you'd get shot by a Nerf gun. The whole point of these is to prototype an idea real quick. And I guess for me, success is people come and they learn and they go away having learned something. So a few people came to our event and it was the first one they'd done, and then they started going to more. And so to me, yes, it was a success. This year we're hoping to get a few more people. We're hoping to host maybe 100 attendees. We open up the workshops during the day so Brookes works with colleges doing foundation degrees. Sometimes students come and do their 3rd year here, and it goes from, I think they get a bachelor's by extending their college program. Yeah. And we also work with schools, so GCSE students, things like that. Those people are invited to the day workshops. So if people are learning, for me, it's a success. Then yes, I would definitely say that that sort of thing is a good thing to do.
I think as sort of in a wider aspect of doing a degree at university is primarily to develop yourself as a learner, not just to sit back and expect the knowledge to sort of pour in and then do something with it, but to develop yourself in being proactive, finding out what your interests are, finding out what direction you want to take your life. And I think, you know, doing activities like hackathon are ideally suited to do that.
But there's also scope if you want to organise events like that. It's not just engaging with things and doing it for yourself. There's also if you want to facilitate, if you want to make something happen, there's support from the department. There's always support in doing stuff like that. If you have ideas, it doesn't matter. You try it out. If you have a good sort of backing for it, then you should have the scope to do what you want to do.
Yes. Another question I received is what sort of awards have students won? I've already mentioned the awards issued by the Tech Partnership, which is this governmental organization which collaborates with major industry in Britain. Sorry. And they won 2 awards in this recent event in November. One for the first year students in ITMB and one for the second year students in software development for business. And other awards that students have won are, for example, George MacDonald won the award for the Parliament poster session as well. And some other awards we recently won was also in a student who contributed to a major vision conference as well. So there are options there to pursue different types of awards as well.
Absolutely, and there's academic engagement as well. If you want to go to conferences, if you want to work hard and take your work to things like that, then there's absolutely room for you to do that. And I think that's one of the more important things, because sometimes at undergraduate level, the emphasis isn't necessarily always on academia and going into events like this and meeting peers, but there is absolutely room to do it. So this parliamentary gig, one of our students took a poster to Parliament and promoted it and was talking to people who aren't necessarily the most technical people, but was talking about something that was very, very important. So if you're engaged enough and you are curious even, then there are people here who will have ins for you or directions for you.
Okay. Another question is that I've heard that you also do robot wars. Are these events open to all students in computing? Okay. We do something called Robot Sumo, and that event is primarily targeted towards students in focus in the computing for robotic systems. When you're talking about robot wars as you see it on the BBC, to be perfectly honest, we don't consider those in robotics to be robots, because they're remote control devices and they're great fun, they're excellent to play with, but we focus on machines that are autonomous, that can work independently, solve problems independently of human direct interaction. So we do have this Robot Sumo competition that we run every single year for the undergraduate students, which is in effect building a robot that's on a disk, a little bit bigger, well, quite a little bigger than this, and then the competition is that one robot should push the other robot off the disk, and that's always great fun to see that happening every year. So this is often a somewhat a misconception in the sense that BBC has appropriated this robot wars term, but they're not really robot wars, they're remote control wars, if you ask me.
Can we, so Wendy's staring at me. How do we get Wendy to stop staring at me?
Yes, unfortunately Wendy is focused on detecting motion.
Oh,
and whenever you have to stop moving.
There you go.
There you go.
Great.
See, that works. And now she look at me. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but sometimes you see that her eyes become pink on the sides, on this side and this side, and that means and that means that she recognizes faces. So she has some sort of face recognition feature that allow her to detect faces, and she's quite familiar with me, I think. No, I think she's given up now. Okay, she agrees. There you go. Okay. Let's see, are there any more live questions we can answer?
So for Robot Sumo, is it just the robotics kids who can get involved, or is it other students as well? Okay.
Yeah, for the last 2 years we've run it for the for the computing for robotic system students, robotic students. But for this but we are and have done in the past have done an open competition for people, and we had several schools contributing from that as well. But it's one of the activities that we would like to pursue. Okay, any more questions here? So what kind of computer hardware and software do students have access to? We have quite a lot actually of specialist hardware in our department. Already mentioned the robots, which is primarily accessible for the different students in computing for robotic systems. But we also have quite a well-stocked network computing laboratory, which you spend quite a lot of time in, I understand.
Yes. So for those of you interested in networks, some of the final year classes, it's build this. So you get your hard drives, you get various machines that you will then build virtual machines on, which essentially means that you will have software to build a virtual network on. So it's all there, and you have these hardware labs which are fantastic. You also have the design suite as well.
Yeah.
So I never did that.
No, but you can use that to design your own systems.
Okay.
And we also have a good contact with our electronics engineering department, so we actually have people who build their own hardware and build their own robots from scratch as well.
So in terms of graphic design and things like that would be what the graphics sort of suite is for as well.
Yes, that's right. Also for CAD design, and we also have access and facilities for 3D printing to create your own parts as well. Other software that we provide are all the standard systems that you would imagine. We have an agreement with Microsoft. That's the Microsoft academic affiliation, I think it's called, which basically means you get free access to all Microsoft software, with the exception of Office, for some reason that we never really worked out why that is. Maybe that's too much of a profit margin for them. Of course, we have access to things like Adobe and other types of well-known software development tools.
So for the networking, a lot of Cisco stuff as well. So Packet Tracer, and we have access to all of their labs. That's all part of the networking specific course. So a lot of Cisco brand stuff.
That's right. Yeah, and part of the network degree is also to pass the first 2 levels of the Cisco accreditation as well.
With the view to, once you've done your degree, you're now ready to take the Cisco sort of first step certification, as it were. So that's what that would be preparing you for.
Okay, there's another question here. What is your favorite module thing that you enjoyed when you were studying? I think that's
favorite module thing? Oh goodness, there were so many module things. But the ones that I really enjoyed were the ones where I had to work really hard. So we had systems administration. Well, there were 2 modules. So one was very technical and one looked more at management and process. So I think those 2 in combination, there were many late nights, late pizza sessions in the lab. So I think those 2 in my final year were probably my favorite kind of pair. I'm going to pair them up. You didn't specify, so I'm going to say 2. You did specify. You said module, but I'm going to give you 2.
Well, 2 is better than 1. What's the best bits of teaching and studying at Brookes? Well, I can only comment on teaching because I didn't study myself.
That's great. I can do the rest. Let's go.
Okay, I'll start by saying the best bits I think of teaching is that, again, the good engagement of students. A lot of students are very engaging and interested in doing things alongside. But also, one of the nice things I think at Brookes is that we have quite a lot of flexibility in our programs, quite a lot of, particularly in the modules, to steer a module, of course, with the exception of the compulsory modules, which we have to do, but to steer a module in a particular direction that the students are interested in. So, for example, we have a device hardware module, which is a 3rd year module, where students are asked to build from scratch using prefabricated components to build an Internet of Things device or a small robot or something like that, and some really good ideas are coming out of that. And one of the interesting things about teaching is that we have the facilities to make students, allow students to make the thing that they are interested in. What do you think about the learning? So in
terms of learning, okay, I'll break it down. So 1 is engagement with the department. So what I did was I became a representative for the student union. So I presented the First I represented my course, and then I represented the department. So what happened then is that I got to know all of these poor academics, and I began to just roam the hallways, and they'd hear me coming. It's like, oh God, what does she want from us now? But that sort of and kind of working with people in the faculty who aren't students. You know, there's more to it than us. But it's really highlighted where we work together and scope for different projects and things like that. So that was very interesting, understanding how almost the department worked. Secondly, the support I got going on exchange. So I think if I'd been in a different area, maybe I wouldn't have gone, because some things came up because I was so technically kind of focused, and the system abroad was quite different. It might not have happened, but it did in my case, and I'm really happy that it did.
Thank you. Another question I've got here is, what is the employability like for courses in computing? Do students tend to secure employment with a placement company? I was prepared for this question, so I looked it up, and it varies a little bit year by year, but on average we have about 88% of students employed or in further studies 6 months after graduating, and we don't have any figures beyond that because of the difficulty of chasing people up. But we do have people who sometimes find employment with a placement company. That is definitely a possibility, and it does and has happened. But of course, you have to realize that the placement company are not always looking for somebody to fill a post. So it might be that they say, well, come back in 3 years when we have extra capacity or something like that. So these things are definitely possible, but I wouldn't bet my house on it, if you see what I mean.
I wouldn't bet my house on it, but just from friends and one-on-ones, that there are many cases in which a placement for a whole year, because they've been working with you so closely, has led to an offer, shall we say, on graduation. So it's definitely worth it. And even if it's just summer internships, we have so many companies who want to work with us, and we have a lot of companies who want to hire Brookes graduates because we work hard and we generally have an idea of what we're talking about. So employability from Brookes, I think so.
In particular, if I can just add to that, is because the way that we design our courses, we get direct feedback in from companies in the area to get an idea of what are they looking for, what would they expect into a graduate to come in, and what skills and abilities should they expect to have. So we definitely focus on making sure that students do have these skills and abilities, but also are capable of thinking about the wider picture, thinking about how to think as a scientist, as a researcher as well, and that gives you sort of a more wider skill set that is widely appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we are any more questions that we can answer for you today. So, what do you think were the highlights and lowlights of studying computing or network?
Lowlights? What are those? So highlights, the reason that I'm doing research now, so I'm working towards my PhD, I graduated in May. The reason I have such a firm standing is because of the people I worked with here. So my advisor here, really they're the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I didn't want to do further study. Turns out that I actually quite enjoy it, but that's sort of the biggie. And then other than that, I had a whale of a time. It's a good department. There were lots of things hosted, and coming to Brookes, there's lots of support for things that I wanted to do. But you do have to engage and get out there a little bit and figure out what you'd like to do. It's alright if you get things wrong, but have an idea of what it is you'd like to do. And if not, there's a lot here to choose from.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up another question that we often get, is about what programming language do you use? What do we teach? And in particular, we have an approach, what we call the programming language agnostic approach. In other words, the idea is that if you can program in one language, it becomes much easier to program in another language. So the actual language you use is less important. But what we do have is we teach the first years in Python and Java, and then later on students get to study languages like C, C++, formal languages like Haskell, and languages that are used in in industry as well, like MATLAB, are also used as well. Okay, still some time for people to send in another final question if they are willing to do so. Well, I think we had a good set of questions so far. Oh, there's another question coming in now. How many women are in the department, and how does the university support women in computing? As a matter of fact, if we're talking about staff members, we got 5 female members of staff out of 20 members of staff, who almost all are principal lecturer or professor, as a matter of fact. And it is, of course, a recognized issue of supporting women in computing science. It's just something that we are quite active in. Certainly at the university, we are pursuing this Athena Swan protocol. I don't know how you felt as a female student at. So
we actively encourage things like the British Computing Society does the Lovelace Colloquium every year, and that's for undergraduate to taught master's students, and it's an all-female conference. They pay for you to go somewhere for 2 days, well, an overnight stay, and for 1 day it's a conference, so it can be it's a poster show, generally speaking, but they have fantastic speakers. So we encourage students to apply for things like that. We generally send small groups up. It really depends on how many people are interested, because there's only so far you can push people, right? But we try and make sure that there are events that are as accommodating as possible, really.
Yeah, I think this actually reflects a wider societal issue. So much of getting women to be interested in this subject, and
it's not just women. It's other groups of people. So women seems to be a very big focus at the moment, but we do have to remember there are lots of other groups we're trying to get represented in the field. But we try real hard, and we just got to keep encouraging people to get to events like this that are facilitated for them, really.
Yeah. It's definitely worthwhile thinking about doing a degree like computer science, because in my view, as I said before, like with robotics, this is just an engineering problem with some computers attached to it. And if you're thinking about the future of engineering in particular, computers will become more and more important, autonomous vehicles in this area. So computing, I think, is a good gateway study for you to work on. So thank you very much for all your questions, and I hope you've learned something from us about what it is like to study at the Department of Computing and Communication Technologies. Thank you very much.